The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is a very important issue that unfortunately hasn't gotten as much attention lately as it should. You know, I'm a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, spent most of my time in Iraq, but I remember I was in a nation outside of Afghanistan getting ready to fly an airplane one day. This was back in the mid-2000s, and Mr. Speaker, the majority leader from the other chamber basically got on television and said, the war in Iraq is lost. He said it's lost, it's done, it's over. I remember that. Because I was on a treadmill getting ready to go fly a mission into Afghanistan when I heard that. You know, the interesting thing about that is I guarantee you our enemy in Iraq probably cheered loudly at the moment they saw the majority leader from the Senate say those words. We know that something very courageous happened. The President of the United States at the time said, not only is the war not lost, we're sending more troops and we're going to win this thing. And we did. We saw the enemy realize that America could never be defeated on the battlefield, it could only be defeated by its will. And President Bush sent a very strong and loud message that America's will not be defeated. This is a situation we face in Afghanistan today. Look, as a member of Congress, as a politician, the easiest thing for me to do is to stand up here and say the war in Afghanistan is lost and we need to just go home. And I tell you, you look at the polling, and with the lack of a president leading this country on the public opinion side of what we're doing in Afghanistan, I'd probably get a lot of people sending Facebook messages and emails saying, go get them. It's time to leave Afghanistan. But you know what? If I did that, I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror and say that I did the right thing. Because the right thing is generations of people that have lived under oppression and have lived for years under the Taliban regime. They stood up, they kicked the Taliban out of their nation. And they've looked at the United States and said, it took you decades at your inception to get your democracy right. Help us get our democracy right. What's at stake here? I look over here at this picture, and I see a couple of things. I see, number one, a girl by the name of Bibi, and if you could see closely at that picture, you would see that she does not have a nose or ears. They were actually cut off by the Taliban. They were cut off by swift justice because somebody in her family committed a crime, sold her into marriage at the age of 14 years old. And at 15 years old, she left her abusive husband, went to her uncle's house, who turned his back on her, and eventually she was captured and apprehended by the Taliban as they forced her family to cut her nose and ears off as justice for running away from a terrible situation. She eventually escaped and went to an American forward operating base and was saved. And then you see in this other picture, as she lives in the United States, she has a prosthetic nose today and is living as close to a normal life as possible despite the trauma that she suffered. On the bottom down here, you'll see a number of girls in school right now, learning and being educated. You know, before we went into Afghanistan, there were something like 800,000 people in school. Today, it's over 6 million. In fact, did you know that 60% of the Afghan population is under the age of 20? And there's this movement in Afghanistan called the civil society in which they stand up and say, it's time for freedom and it's time to take our country back. Are you also aware, Mr. Speaker, that every province is now under control of Afghanistan and the United States has reverted to a training mission and a counterterrorism mission? These are all huge victories for the Afghan people that we ought to be celebrating, but instead, I wake up the other day and I look in the paper and the President of the United States, the leader of the free world, is saying we are exploring an option after 2014 to take all troops out of Afghanistan. Now let me ask you a question. Do you think that made the Taliban frightened? Or do you think they cheered when they saw the President of the United States say, I'm considering all troops gone after 2014? The whole year of 2014 was pulled out of a hat for political reasons. When you say that we're surging in Afghanistan, but as the last troop goes in, the first troop's coming out from the surge, it's not very effective. You know, the Taliban have a saying, actually. It says America may have the watches, but we have the time. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, we are on the verge of a clear victory in Afghanistan for the Afghan people. The biggest mistake we can make today is to let politics come into play and to withdraw and leave 0 troops after 2014. In 50 years, history will judge us for that. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Capter, for 5 minutes.